Stellantis has laid off about 100 workers at the Windsor assembly plant. A company spokesperson confirms the decision is due to what they call volume adjustments. Unifor Local 444 says the plant has found itself overstaffed and work is underway to find jobs for the affected members. The plant is at the start of a 2-week summer shutdown. Earlier this year, Stellantis paused production of the electric Dodge Charger, citing U.S. tariff and poor electric vehicle sales.
They told you it was a temporary pause. The media, the union, even the government that gave Stellantis $500 million in your tax dollars, they lied. This isn't a factory closure. This is a financial betrayal. Look at this chart. This is the real story of Windsor, Ontario, the market they all pretend is stable. In November 2025, the average price in Windsor, Essex slid to $552,391, a 5.6% drop from last year. But forget the price. Look at the listings. New listings are up over 22%, the highest October inventory in over a decade. Why are sellers panicking? They know what the news won't print, the trade war bleeding into their equity.
Within a day of Stellantis announcements on October 15th, I sent a letter to Antonio Filosa, the global CEO of Stellantis, stating that the company's actions were unacceptable and that we expected them to honor their legally binding commitments to the government of Canada.
Now the mood is brighter, lighter, almost electric at the Stellantis plant today. The third shift was cut 5 years ago, but the company says it will be brought back in February and hiring is already underway. The news has brought a renewed sense of optimism to the plant.
I think it's a great opportunity for everybody, new jobs. I just got hired recently because of the third shift, so a lot more jobs for people off the streets and people are looking for something.
To understand the time bomb in Windsor, you need to rewind to the $500 million government gamble. The government promised security and jobs with your tax money. They paid Stellantis the ransom. And what did Stellantis do? In December 2025, Canada issued a formal default notice because Stellantis moved production to Illinois. The government paid and the jobs are still gone. The betrayal is complete. Now let's look at the data set that proves this isn't just a Windsor problem, it's an Ontario time bomb. I'm going to show you the exact neighborhood in Windsor where inventory is exploding and prices are collapsing the fastest. That is at 6:15. But first, the key question: who is buying homes when the job market is collapsing? The answer is the most important lesson you will learn about Canadian real estate this year. The core lie is that the Windsor market is only driven by auto workers. That is outdated thinking. The real problem is the investor flood that just hit a solid wall. We've already seen active listings in Windsor, Essex jump over 22% year over year. Why? Because thousands of investors were playing the student rental game. Windsor was the low-cost entry point for the entire GTA. They bought cheap houses, chopped them up, and rented them to the surge of international students. Now, two things are happening simultaneously, and the data is a massacre. The federal student visa cap hit. The flow of students is not a river anymore, it's a trickle. Rental demand is softening. This is evident in the CMHC report from Q4 2025, which is already showing vacancy rates easing from 1.5% to 2.8% in the broader Windsor-Essex rental market. That seemingly small 1.3-point jump is enough to shatter the margins of highly leveraged investor properties. The Windsor benchmark price for apartments is down a brutal 5.2% year over year, and townhouses are down 1.9%. The investor model is failing, rental income is stabilizing, but property values are sinking. The investors who bought in 2021 and 2022 are now underwater. Their fixed-rate mortgages are renewing in 2026 at devastatingly higher rates, while their property value is falling. They need to sell, and they are flooding the market. The result is an oversupply of inventory that real end users cannot absorb because the job market is collapsing. This is a perfect storm. Let's look at the numbers no one is discussing. In 2023, Windsor Essex issued over 1,800 new non-university affiliated student visas. By Q4 2025, that number had plummeted to just 512. That is a 70% collapse in the investor's primary source of revenue. The investors aren't just selling their properties, they are selling the idea that Windsor is a safe cash flow hub. They are listing their converted multiple-unit rental properties, creating a surge of ugly, distressed inventory that poisons the pricing for everyone else. This is a deliberate, systematic liquidation. We need to look at the specific neighborhoods where this collapse is most violent. West Windsor and the core area near the university are now seeing active listings up over 35% year over year. The benchmark price for a townhouse in this rental-heavy zone has fallen by over 6.1% since the 2024 peak. This is where the panic is deepest. The average days on market, DOM, for rental properties in these specific zones has quietly stretched to 45 days. 45 days to find a tenant when last year it was 3 days. 45 days of carrying costs on a massive mortgage. The investor is bleeding cash every single day the unit is empty. They cannot wait for a recovery. They must sell. They are your target. Now, let's talk about the debt time bomb that guarantees this wave of desperate sellers will continue well into 2026. This isn't just about an empty apartment, it's about a debt renewal catastrophe. The Bank of Canada confirmed in its Q4 2025 financial system review that approximately $525 billion in Canadian mortgages are set to renew between 2026 and 2028. This is not a guess, this is guaranteed debt shock. The Windsor vulnerability is clear. The average Windsor homeowner who took out a fixed-rate mortgage in 2021 or 2022 is currently paying around 2.5% to 3.0% interest. When they renew in 2026, they will be forced into rates between 4.5% and 5.5%. The payment shock for a typical $400,000 mortgage in Windsor means an increase in monthly payments of $700 to $950. In an economy built on auto worker stability and rental income where incomes are stagnant or falling, that payment shock is a default sentence. The banks are not waiting. They know this wall is coming. They are already quietly increasing their required stress test buffers for mortgage pre-approvals, effectively shutting out a huge chunk of potential buyers. The supply is rising, but the buyer pool is shrinking. The 3,500 homes currently listed for sale in Windsor are just the opening act. The main event is the desperate wave of sellers who realize they cannot afford a $1,000 jump in their mortgage payment. They will be forced to list, further overwhelming the market and driving prices down by double digits in the most exposed neighborhoods. This is the cycle. Investors liquidate due to student caps, auto workers liquidate due to layoffs, and primary homeowners liquidate due to renewal shock. Windsor is trapped in the center of all three forces. The contagion of fear is spreading. Do not think this is just a Windsor problem. This is a trade war contagion hitting all of Ontario's industrial towns. We see the same story playing out in Sault Ste. Marie. The announcement of over 1,000 layoffs at Algoma Steel by March, despite a massive government investment, proves that the trade tariffs imposed by the US are tearing the heart out of Ontario's value-added industries. This creates a psychological barrier. Buyers in Hamilton, London, and Sudbury are watching Windsor and Sault Ste. Marie. They see government subsidies fail to save jobs. They know their jobs are next. The data connection is undeniable. The CMHC warned in February 2025 that U.S. trade policy uncertainty was the single biggest headwind for Canada's economy, leading to a likely modest recession in 2026. This isn't just bad luck, this is a systemic shock. Ontario's price correction is the worst in the country. Year over year, Ontario home prices have dropped 6.3% province-wide, a larger decline than any other major province. Why? Because our market was the most inflated, the most dependent on cheap debt, and the most vulnerable to manufacturing job losses. The investor exodus has begun. Do not believe the narrative that Windsor's pain stays in Windsor. It is bleeding directly into the surrounding GTA suburbs. This is the price contagion. Investors who are underwater in Windsor didn't just sell their second home. Many are now forced to tap their GTA HE LOCS to cover their losses or sell their primary residence. This brings the distress directly to Brampton, Hamilton, and Mississauga. This is the hidden, terrifying phase of the collapse. The GTA HELOC exposure is critical. Canadian banks are sitting on over $315 billion in home equity lines of credit, an immense pool of second mortgages held predominantly by GTA homeowners. As house values drop in the suburbs where most of these HELOCs are tied, the banks are quietly sending out reevaluation notices, forcing homeowners to immediately pay down the principal or face foreclosure. This creates a massive non-mortgage-based selling wave, which YouTube analysts are completely missing. This wave is driven by emergency equity withdrawal, not simple financial planning. It is panic selling disguised as refinancing, and it is adding desperate inventory to the market. The Brampton and Hamilton shock is here. Brampton condo prices are down 9.1% year-over-year as of Q4 2020, and Hamilton's detached homes are down 7.8%. The affordability cushion that these cities offered is gone. They are now just as exposed as Windsor because the investor base is the same, highly leveraged, reliant on low rates and high rents. The rental market is now completely disconnected from the purchase market. Rent remains high due to supply constraints, but the cost of owning the property is so high that investors are losing money every single month. This negative cash flow guarantees more listings will hit the market in the first half of 2026. The suburban collapse is not about rates anymore. It's about debt fatigue and the realization that the equity gains of 2020 to 2022 were phantom wealth. The correction is not stabilizing, it is spreading from the periphery back to the core. Windsor was the test case. The GTA is the main event. The most dangerous part of the residential collapse is the secondary condominium market failure. Investors who cannot sell their Windsor homes are now liquidating their pre-construction condo assignments in Toronto. This is because they need the cash and they cannot qualify for the mortgages on two properties anymore. This shadow inventory, thousands of assigned contracts, is entering the market at a discount, dragging down the prices of completed resale condos across the entire GTA. This creates a vicious cycle. Falling resale prices reduce the appetite for pre-construction, crippling the developers. But the collapse of residential real estate, while horrific, is only half the threat. The truth is, the commercial real estate CRE market is the silent ticking time bomb that the government cannot afford to acknowledge. The bank exposure is astronomical. The Big Six Canadian banks hold hundreds of billions in direct and indirect CRE loans. If these loans default, it could freeze the entire lending market, making it impossible for anyone to get a mortgage. This is the true systemic threat that threatens to crash the entire economy and plunge Canada into a prolonged recession. The office tower crisis is already here. Downtown Toronto office towers are suffering from a 20% vacancy rate, a historic high, up from pre-pandemic norms of 5%. The value of these multi-million-dollar assets is being decimated by permanent work-from-home trends. These towers were financed with low-rate debt set to mature specifically in the 2026 and 2027 window. The timing is lethal. The refinancing trap will be brutal. When these massive CRE loans renew, the interest rate will be double, and the property's valuation will be 30 to 40% lower due to the vacancy rate. The bank will demand the owner immediately put up hundreds of millions in collateral, which they don't have. Default is inevitable. The domino effect is that when a major CRE fund defaults, the bank seize the asset and flood the market with cheap commercial property. This signals a total collapse of business confidence and kills any hope of job growth in the service sector. This directly impacts the consumer confidence needed to save the residential market. Furthermore, we must look at the retail CRE sector. While reports focus on downtown office space, the collapse of retail plazas in suburban areas, those anchored by small businesses and services, is accelerating. Higher rents combined with reduced foot traffic due to economic anxiety are pushing these businesses to bankruptcy. This leads to empty storefronts, which further devalues the plazas, creating another wave of distressed commercial sales. The property tax base for GTA cities is threatened by this dual collapse in office and retail valuation, forcing cities to hike property taxes on residents, putting even more strain on already struggling homeowners. The Bank of Canada is trying to balance two crises, the residential mortgage wall and the commercial loan bomb. The problem is saving one guarantees the destruction of the other. If they cut rates dramatically to save homeowners, they fuel inflation, making everything else unaffordable. If they keep rates high to fight inflation, they guarantee the CRE market collapses, taking the banks and the corporate bond market with it. They are trapped in a no-win scenario. There is no escape route for the central bank that does not involve major economic pain. The only question is where they choose to inflict the maximum damage. The political layer of this crisis is also rotting. The government, deeply invested in the narrative of a stable market for electoral purposes, is deliberately misrepresenting the scale of the CRE crisis to avoid a panic. They are pushing programs designed to assist first-time buyers while simultaneously ignoring the $150 billion in looming corporate and CRE bond maturities. This is a classic political tactic. Sacrifice the future stability of the financial system to win a short-term political victory. Their silence is not ignorance, it is complicity in the largest financial cover-up in Canadian history. This systemic risk is why your strategy must be aggressive. The market is not functioning rationally, it is being propped up by political rhetoric and temporary extensions of credit. Once the commercial bond market cracks, the residential market will follow, regardless of interest rate changes. The money needed to sustain this market is simply not there. The foreign capital that once poured into Toronto has dried up, fleeing to more stable jurisdictions like the United States. We are seeing a capital flight that confirms the insiders' deepest fears. The window for easy escape is closing fast. Here is your final action plan for late 2025. For buyers, do not buy a condo in the downtown GTA core. You are buying into the CRE crisis, as the condo market will be crushed by the commercial crash. For sellers, if you own an investment property in the Windsor, Essex area or a highly leveraged suburban rental, you are in the path of the worst storm. Liquidate now. The system has failed. Your financial future depends on you seeing the truth and acting on it now. The final numbers confirm the peril. You are warned.